let's talk about communication. Communication between me, an adult, and a child. Or let's say specifically a baby. So we all know that babies don't talk. Maybe babies don't know they don't talk. Well, we know that babies don't talk. Even little kids know babies don't talk. My nephew says, when my wife says, you have to ask her for permission. He's like, but she doesn't talk. He wanted her toy. So basically, how do we communicate if we don't talk? Well, if you ever travel, you realize that there's different languages in different parts of the world. And we actually communicate with other ways, right? Body language, we call it. I'm hungry, right? Give me that thing to eat. So there's often miscommunication. And the thing is, body language is not as precise as verbal language, shall we say, structured language. So when I was in Korea, I was trying to eat something and I didn't know how to read their writing, and I just pointed and a person asked me if I'm sure, and I obviously am not sure, but I mean, of course I have to say I'm sure because I want something to eat and you can't talk to me, I can't talk to you because we don't speak the same language, and I end up with this dish that I didn't want, right? That's just the way it works. But I mean, I got food, something edible, that much was understood. And I think that, one key is you don't think about precision, but you think about generally the gist of it gets across. And so let's go back to the baby. How do I talk to the baby? If you just treat them as an alien or a human being who doesn't speak your language, right, you realize that a lot of things we do to talk to babies don't actually make sense. So for example, we communicate with our body language by touching them, this or that, right? So pat, 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 right? We pat them like all the time. My wife and I says, why are you still patting the baby? I was like, I'm holding her, just was patting her. Why am I still doing it? I don't know. But I'm sure I'm not the only one, but some people literally pat the baby the entire time they have the baby. So that's like you going to another country where you don't speak the language. Everything somebody asks you, it basically is useless, right? So you're not telling the baby anything useful because you're just patting the baby all the time, right? Some other stuff you communicate with, you pick up the baby. That's communication, right? You're doing something. Or you put down the baby. Or you feed a baby, or this or that, right? So the baby cries and you feed a baby. There we go. Communication worked, right? It's like me asking someone, hey, I'd like the double cheeseburger. And then I pay and they give me a double cheeseburger. Transaction, done. But the thing is, when you do stuff, it trains them to think a certain way. And you understand, right? Because if I go to a foreign country and if I smile at people and people smile back to me, I presume that smiling is a good thing, right? But maybe smiling is a bad thing and I just got mistaken because all these 5 people I spoke to are weird or have ulterior motives, or I don't know, right? But in general, action response. That's how we learn things. And even babies can learn things, right? Babies can learn cry, response, get picked up, right? How long I cry, how quickly they respond. If I raise my volume, does it get an action quicker, right? We think of these things, or I would say I think of these things not as higher level functions, things that require much brain development, which they don't have at this point in time, but just simple things that even animals would know, right? Like a dog. Woof, right? The thing is, we have to think how we communicate with the baby. You don't just do stuff. I mean, it's so easy to just do stuff. Tracy Hogg, the baby whisperer, calls it accidental parenting. You don't mean to do it badly, but you end up doing it badly. The thing is, the baby's so cute, you just want to pick it up, you don't want to let them cry too much. All these things you just sort of do without thinking. But can you imagine if we were talking and you just say stuff without thinking? I mean, some people actually do, but that's not necessarily the best thing, right? So you go to the restaurant, you just talk, right? Like, yeah, I was thinking of getting something to eat. This is sort of a lower class restaurant. I'm not really sure how safe the food is here. Oh, that waiter, he really doesn't look too good. He should really, clean himself up. I hope he's not delivering my food. Is there a busboy? Oh, I remember last time in a restaurant, I sent the steak back and all they did was microwave it. Like, seriously, what kind of service? I wonder if this place is run by the same guy. It's like all these things we say, all these things we think, shall we say, we don't say. And if you want to sort of take that, right, and understand it more fully, intentions are not the same as actions, right? You may intend for your action to be beneficial, but you may mess the whole thing up, right? That happens often on TV and I think in real life too, right? And I think the other thing is when you say stuff, when you do stuff, right, you have to make sure you're sort of consistent, right? Like, I used to argue with my roommate about words. Because I say, you're using that word. And I hear that tone of voice. And I know what you're saying. Like, no. I had no intention. I was saying, yeah, right. As in, I completely agree with you. I did not mean it sarcastically. I was like, seriously, the way you link your words together, every single other person in the world uses it. But yes, technically, if you look at the words individually, they mean that. We were arguing about things like, yeah, right. Because, in America, yeah, right means I'm sarcastic. I don't believe you. Stupid, right? But he was saying, yeah, right means no, I agree with you, this or that. I think you have a point. And I just found it hard to believe that he could use language in a way that nobody else uses it, right? And so I think that's the whole thing as well. So one thing is the baby interacts with different people, and different people speak differently, shall we say, with their body language. Does the baby get confused? I would think it's pretty easy to get confused. I'm not saying that you should only have a few people interact with a baby. I mean, that's not what we do. But I think the other thing is, you yourself, do you confuse your language sometimes? You do this or you do that, and you're actually not consistent, right? I don't think consistency is the most important thing, but I do think when you're talking, right, you should probably use ambivalent in the same way because it's you, right? If you understand ambivalent actually doesn't mean, on the fence, but rather you have mixed conflicting feelings strongly in both directions. If you use it that way one time, you can't just use it the other way the next time. That's just not how language works. The same word is supposed to mean the same thing. And I think the same action should also mean the same thing with a baby, right? I think that's the whole thing about babies. They do communicate. We just have to put our brains to work thinking, how do we communicate with them, right? It's not like you go to a foreign country, or some people do, but it's not like you should go to a foreign country and say, wow, these people are stupid, they don't speak English. No, that's not the way it works. The baby doesn't speak English. The baby doesn't speak. But there is a way to communicate. We can't communicate without language, without verbal language, without structured language. But we have to make sure we establish the terms and use the words consistently. So for me, the way I talk is patting is soothing, right? Telling you, hey, good job. You're doing it well, right? So I will do it when she's calm. And when she ramps up, cries and screams, then I'll stop patting. Because I don't want to say, good job, you're doing it well. Because I don't think she is. And that's my way of communicating with the baby.